Hey everybody, welcome to Garden Time with Belle. Well, today's video is going to be a garden to table video. Like most of you, here we are in the first few days of August. I bet if you grow vegetables, you're growing tomatoes, and I bet you've got some on the vine. So today I thought we would make tomato pie. So before I head into the greenhouse and grab my harvest basket, I'm going to invite everybody out there to please like and subscribe to my channel. Subscribing helps me grow my channel. It helps me meet up with more gardeners like you. And for those of you that are subscribing to the channel already, thank you guys so much for your support. I really enjoy connecting with you, hearing from you, learning what's happening in your garden. So I think the very next thing I need to do is just grab that harvest basket out of the greenhouse and get in there, and we're going to pick tomatoes for our tomato pie, and we're going to pick some herbs. Those of you that follow my videos know that I have one raised bed devoted to my tomatoes this year. I have 8 tomato cages in here, and I'm having a stellar tomato year. I could not be happier. I have been harvesting and harvesting, and you're going to see I've got a lot more to harvest today. In and amongst my tomatoes, I have lots of marigolds, the French variety, which repels bad insects, and I have a lot of basil, and we're going to actually be cutting some basil today to go into our tomato pie. So I think we just need to get after it. So let's take a look at this one. Look at my lemon boys. Wow, wow, wow. They are beautiful. Look at that. So put that in here. You know, I don't even really need my snips. Maybe I'll use them for my herbs. Tomatoes, typically when they're ripe, you can gently twist and pull, and when they release easily from the stem, you know they're ready. So that's some lemon boy. Let's take a look at this next one. Oh yes, better boy. So I'm going to come in back here. See, here's a nice better boy, and I see another one in the back that needs to be picked, so I'll take it off. All right, so I've got lemon boy. Look at all these boys. I've got better boy. Oh, come down here. This is actually something I've grown for a while. It's super tasty. This is called Cali Gold, and although it's somewhat lemony colored, it's more golden. You can probably see that. Isn't that pretty? What a pretty color. So of course we're not going to use all these tomatoes in today's recipe, but I'm going to go ahead and take the most ripe ones in while I'm out here, and we'll be eating on those and giving those away. Now, we're not going to use these cherries, but I need to harvest them anyhow. Look at these, my all-time favorite, super sweet 100s. You might want to come in really close. Look at those gorgeous cherry tomatoes. There are tons of them. Yeah, super prolific, and you can see above my head how tall this cherry tomato has gotten. When we talk about tomatoes being determinate or indeterminate, basically what that means is if it's indeterminate, which these super sweet 100s are, means it will continue to grow and grow and grow and grow until your first frost and continue to produce fruit. So that's important to know when you're planting tomatoes. How big is that going to get? What kind of support do you need? My husband built me these super sturdy metal cages this year out of some cattle panel that we use for different trellises in the garden. But also, you can't see it, and it's okay if you can't, but in the middle of most of these tomatoes, actually come in here, you can see this one. Do you see this stake? And do you see this twine? So when they were much younger, I did go ahead and put a stake right in the center for some extra support. Whoops. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick some of these while we're out here, and then I'll show you some of the other tomatoes on the other side we're going to use. Woo! So I've moved around to this cherry tomato. This is called Sun Gold, and I only started growing Sun Gold about, I don't know, gosh, maybe 3 years ago. It is just as, prolific as the super sweet 100s. And here's why you need to be checking on your tomatoes and harvesting them every day or every couple of days, because when they get so full of moisture and water, they will split sometimes, like you see here. Here's another one, because it's just bigger than the little skin could hold. So don't let that worry you. You know, I still eat them unless they look kind of like they're rotting. a little split doesn't bother me. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and harvest these Sun Gold, and then we're gonna cut some more big tomatoes for our tomato pie. My harvest basket is pretty darn full, but we cannot make tomato pie without using some of my very favorite, forever and always, tomatoes, Cherokee Purple. They are an heirloom variety. I've got a couple of those down here, and oh my gosh, you have to come in here and check this out. I didn't see any earlier, but look at all these down here. I definitely need to get these harvested. So let's see. I am going to use my nippers because they're way in here, and that's going to make it a lot easier for me to harvest these. Okay, so look at this. So again, I've been leaving these on the vine knowing that I was going to try to make some tomato pie, and they've got a little bit of splitting, but that's okay. Honestly, you don't have to be that fussy about it. Look at these. Oh my goodness. Time for harvesting some of the herbs. So I'm going to pull some chives, some basil, and some parsley. Instead of me adding onion, because sometimes you can add onion to tomato pie if you really like that, I find that just adding some chives gives it a really mellow oniony flavor. So I will clean off the chives when we get inside. So here's some chives, and then if you look in here, I'm gonna grab some basil, and I grow many different types of basil, but this is your basic Italian Genovese style basil. These leaves right here, so I am gonna harvest some basil. I'm gonna grab from some basil from down here on this other plant, and then we're gonna go find some parsley. That is more than enough. Okay. Last herb to harvest would be my Italian flat leaf parsley. And I grow lots of this from seed because I like to feed the beautiful swallowtail butterflies that feed on dill, parsley, I don't know what other herbs, but I've already had some caterpillars eating these this year, and I've already actually seen some swallowtail butterflies flying around the property, and so I will put that image on the screen for you so you can see what I'm talking about. So I always try to grow extra herbs for pollinators and insects. I've got what I need for the tomato pie. I've got lots of beautiful tomatoes in here, way more than we're going to use. And I've got the 3 kinds of herbs, the basil, the parsley, and some chives. So next stop, we're going to go inside the house and put together this tomato pie. All right, I've made it inside the kitchen. I put on some good music because I don't know about you all, but I love when I'm cooking to have some tunes in the background. So, you know, I am of a certain age, so yacht rock it is for today. I have my ingredients assembled. You know, I am used to filming outside in the garden, and so inside I don't film much. I don't have any fancy lighting equipment, but I think you all will be able to see just fine and watch the process of how I like to put my tomato pie together. So I'm going to grab the camera and show you all the ingredients first, and then we're going to get to the very simple process of making tomato pie. It is not tomato pie without tomatoes. So I'm going to go through the ingredients and the quantities of each. I chose 4 different types of tomatoes. You were with me when we just harvested. This is Better Boy, Carolina Gold, my all-time favorite, oh my gosh, Cherokee Purple, the best tasting tomato ever, heirloom, and Lemon Boy. So if we hop over here on the other side, let's take a look at the other ingredients. And honestly, you all, it just doesn't take hardly any ingredients for this recipe. And actually, this is my recipe. I've been making tomato pie for years in a whole variety of ways. So anyways, but I will make sure I include the recipe, of course, in the description below. So I've got my salt and pepper. Okay, so let's look at the herbs we just picked together, some basil, parsley, and chives. And basically, in a minute, I'm gonna chop those up, and you wanna put in about a half a cup of chopped fresh herbs. They have to be fresh. Do not use dried. It will not taste as good as it could. bacon bits, of course. My husband loves bacon, so we're going to throw some of that on top. 2 cups of cheese, and in this bowl, I've got a cup of sharp cheddar and a cup of mozzarella. Again, any kind of cheese. I've used all different kinds of cheeses. I've used super fancy cheese, so whatever you like. Get a nice melting cheese like the Mott's. Fontina works great if you love Italian cheeses, something that melts well, and then something with some punch, which is why I chose sharp cheddar. Here's a cup of mayonnaise, and then last but not least, here's my homemade pie crust. Yeah, it looks kind of gnarly, doesn't it? But I promise you, it is gonna taste great. I actually baked my pie crust last night, and I filmed it. So I'm gonna put here in just a minute, up in the video, I'm going to show you the process that I like to use. Now, doesn't look great. And here's the problem. When you see my video in just a little bit, what I neglected to do, because I was so excited about filming this for you all, I forgot when I put the raw pie dough in my pie shell here in this pie plate, I didn't refrigerate it. And that's essential that you refrigerate your pie dough in the pie plate you're going to use for at least 30 minutes before you put it in a hot oven. When you forget to, like I did, what you get is called shrinkage. Do you see how it's not all the way up to the top? Yeah, it shrank down, but you know what? This is just for me and my family. I'm not trying to win any awards here on the most prettiest pie. It's gonna taste amazing regardless. So let me put some of that video that I took of me making the pie crust, but you do not need to make your own pie crust, everybody. Get store-bought if you like, roll it out, bake it, or get the pre-done pie shells at the grocery store. They'll work just as well. All right, I'm going to do my very best to make sure I capture hopefully some decent video. You know, I'm not used to filming inside much, although, oh gosh, several years ago, actually, I had a cooking blog, a food blog, and I did a little bit of videography, but mostly it was my website. So yeah, using the camera inside the kitchen is not the easiest thing to do, but we're going to do our best. So little flour on the counter, little flour on my rolling pin, and all I'm gonna do is roll out my pie dough. That's it. I'm gonna One of the tricks a lot of you may know is to roll your dough up on your rolling pin and then lay it in your pie plate, and that's what I'm going to attempt to do here. But I'm just going ahead with my bench scraper. I'm just going to go ahead and try to release a little bit of that dough from the counter. So usually, if no one's watching, I can do this. So do you see how I've used the rolling pin? Next step, I'm going to take my parchment paper and I'm going to lay it right there. And then here's where those pie weights come into play. I finally got some pie weights. These are just these little, I guess, well, I don't know what this is made out of, these little beads, but you can put them in your pie plate. And what that's going to do is that's going to weight the pie so it doesn't puff up too much, the pie crust. The other thing I've done for years is I've actually taken just dried beans. Buy yourself some beans, they're not very expensive at all. And I would fill this up with dried beans and it will do the same thing that these pie weights are doing. And actually, these pie beads are okay, but they also make little ceramic balls for pie weights, and I'm actually thinking I want to get a hold of some of those. I think they would work better because they would come up higher and keep the sides up against the sides of the pie plate. So that's it. That's all I need to do for its first bake. Okay, first thing we need to do is slice our tomatoes. After they're sliced, I'm gonna lay them on this mesh screen over a jelly roll pan because I'm gonna salt them. You don't wanna skip this step. Salting your tomatoes will draw out excess moisture. If you don't do this part, sometimes your tomato pie can be super juicy and soggy, and nobody really wants that. So that's all there is to it. So you can watch me slice them, salt them, and then we're gonna move on to the next step. So you want to shoot for about a half a cup of chopped fresh herbs, but honestly, you know, if you love lots of herbs as much as I do, put as many as you want in your tomato pie. So I'm going to just quickly chop up these beautiful chives. And again, I think I said this when we were out in the garden, instead of adding onion to my tomato pie, and you certainly could if you're a big onion fan, you can also just use chives and they'll give it a super duper mild oniony flavor. And since I have loads of chives in the garden, why not use what I've got and save myself a step. All right, so there's my chives. I'll move those over out of the way. Basil, basil, oh my goodness. I happen to love Italian food. Gosh, we've been to Italy, all over different parts of Italy. Love their cuisine. Probably my favorite thing to eat and my favorite type of cuisine to cook. And basil could not be easier to grow in your garden. All right, so here's a little trick. I like to stack up my basil leaves, just like so, before I do what the French call chiffonade your basil. I'll show you that little technique. Super simple. So just make a stack. Hope you guys can see that. Okay, I think that's about enough for our little stack. And again, this is Genovese style basil. Use whatever basil you prefer. All right, so here's the chiffonade. You take your little stack and carefully, try to roll it up. All right, so I've got a little log of basil, and then I'm just gonna slice through this stack, and I will have little ribbons or chiffonade. So do you see how cutting it that way? And then you can just rough chop from there. Chop it however you like, but that's just how I have always liked to chop my basil. All right, so basil's done, chives are done. Let's just do some of that Italian flat leaf parsley. This is the only kind of parsley I ever cook with. It's the only type of parsley I grow. That curly parsley does not have the depth of flavor at all compared to Italian flat leaf. So if you're deciding to grow some parsley, this would be the one I would encourage you to grow in your garden. And again, I've grown all of these plants from seed. I grow lots of extra herbs. You know, if you follow my channel, I have tons of different kinds of herbs all throughout the garden. They're great for pollinators. They're great for your other plants. All right, so then we're just gonna mix this all together. And again, I'm gonna shoot for around a half a cup, but I'm not measuring. I'm measuring with my eyes. But for those of you that wanna keep track, and I'll have the recipe for quantities in the description below. That's good enough, I think. Half a cup of chopped fresh herbs. Next step, to combine all these ingredients in a bowl, because we're gonna cover those sliced tomatoes in the pie with this deliciousness. So as I mentioned before, you've got 2 cups of cheese, any kind of shredded cheese you like. I have Sharp Cheddar and Mozzarella, cup of mayo, and our fresh herbs. This is about a half a cup that we just chopped together, and I've got some salt and pepper here. Super easy, everybody. So I'm just gonna dump that 1 cup of mayo in. And then my herbs are gonna go in. And then 1.5 cups of this. This is 2 cups, so I'm going to reserve about 1/2 cup of this cheese to put on the top of the tomato pie right before we bake it. So I do want to make sure I reserve a little bit. So that's all there is to it. We're going to stir, and I want to see those fresh herbs. I want to taste these delicious fresh herbs. All right, so I'm just stirring it up. That's all that we've got to do for now. So I think I am going to take a little break myself. I'm going to let those tomatoes let off their extra moisture. I'm going to probably leave them for an hour. I just want to make sure I draw out some of the excess moisture, and I might even dab them with paper towels before we assemble. So yeah, so I'm going to take a break, maybe make another cup of coffee, and then when we come back, all we have to do is assemble the pie, pop it in the oven. It's going to be delicious. So let me show you all. I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but there is a lot of excess moisture, which is exactly what I wanted. But I'm going to take one more step, and I'm going to take some paper towels and blot them, and you can see, look at that. So again, I don't want them, of course, bone dry, but I do want to pull out a little bit more of the moisture from them. So we'll do like that. I think I'll give them a quick flip. The other side. Do the same on it. All we have to do now is just assemble our tomato pie. So I am going to put a couple layers of tomatoes. Doesn't matter at all how you do this part. I am just going to freewheel it, as they say. Let's see, maybe I can go like so. And then you see there's a little, some openings. So I'm gonna just take my knife and I am gonna cut up some of these other pieces to see if I can get them sort of to fit. I'd like as full of a layer as I can. So I just took one of the slices and cut them into quarters, which provided these little triangles, and then I need a little something in there. So let's see if this will fit. All right, good enough. All right, so I am not going to salt these tomatoes because they were salted to pull the moisture out, and it looked like a lot of salt, which it sort of was, but I blotted them with the paper towel, so that will draw off a lot of the extra salt. So now I'm just going to go in with another layer, like so. And again, this, you know, you don't have to be super precise about it, just so it fits. And depending upon the size of your tomatoes, that's going to make a big difference in terms of how many you use. So, you know, it's not an exact science at all, but that is good enough. All right, we've got 2 layers of tomatoes. So now we need to add that mayonnaise, cheese, and herb mixture over the top. So I'm just going to dollop that around, and then we'll spread it gently with a metal spoon. All right, get all of that delicious mayonnaise herb mixture. So you just kind of want to smooth it out over the top of your tomatoes. Again, this is rustic. I'm not trying to make it perfect by any means. It's all about enjoying fresh summer flavors. If you all have some interesting ways that you love to use up all of your tomatoes in your garden, please leave a comment in below, because let's share some favorite ways you like to use up all your amazing tomatoes from your garden. All right, so that is good. I've got it spread out pretty well. All right. All right, now, as I mentioned before, I like to reserve a little extra cheese. We started with 2 cups of cheese. I reserved about 1/2 cup to sprinkle on the top. And that's all that's required here. All right. And then, because my husband loves bacon, and you know what, so do I, and because this reminds us of BLTs, which we're going to be eating an awful lot of over the next month, I'm going to just sprinkle the bacon on top. How much bacon? Oh gosh, you guys, I'm not sure. I just whack off a big chunk, chop it up, and throw it in the cast iron skillet and brown it up. So maybe probably 3 slices of bacon, 3 or 4, however much bacon your family likes. Oh, look at that. All right, next step, the oven. The pie is finally going in. You want to preheat your oven to 375. And I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes. I'll check it at that point. I want to see some slight browning, some bubbling of the cheese mixture. So we're going to check back in 30 minutes, see how it's doing. If it needs a little more time, we'll give it more time. It has been 30 minutes, so let's pull our tomato pie out and let's take a look at it. Ooh, yes. My goodness. Wow, wow, wow. I can actually hear it sizzling. I'll bring the camera in nice and close, and yeah, I'd say it is done. All right, let's give it a close-up look. Yes, definitely done. It's nicely browned. It is bubbling. You might even be able to hear the bubbles. So we're gonna let this rest and sit for at least 30 minutes because it is loaded with cheese and fat, and it needs to kind of firm up before we try to slice it. So I'll bring you back, everybody, as soon as it's time to sample. So I ended up letting my tomato pie rest for about an hour because, gosh, it's just boiling hot when it first comes out of the oven. And I'll bring it in here so you can see what it looks like. So I've sliced my first piece and got to give it a test. It's looking really delicious, looking like I would expect it to. And even though that crust I made wasn't the most perfect crust, it is super flaky and completely done. It is not a soggy crust at all. So let's dig in and give this a taste. Delicious, absolutely delicious. You get the crispness from the bacon on top, the crispy crust, super savory tomatoes, of course, and you definitely get the herb kick. You definitely can taste those beautiful, delicious fresh herbs from the garden. So thank you all so much for hanging out with me today as we got to do a garden to table version of a video where we harvested some of those beautiful vegetables that I've been tending to. There is nothing more gratifying for those of us who grow vegetables than to harvest them and turn them into something delicious to feed ourselves and our families. So until next time, I'm going to wish everybody out there happy gardening.